and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. This one is player rankings with myself and George from Ingenuity Fantasy, which, if you don't know about Ingenuity Fantasy, do check them out. ingenuityfantasy.com. The link is in the description. All sorts of good stuff on there. They've got match stats from Opta. They've got articles on various different things like captaincy and differentials. They've got the player rankings, which we're going to be talking about today. And they've got the transfer wizard, which is a cool feature. You just put in what position you need, how much money you got to spend on that position, and it will give you a ranked list of players to consider. But yeah, today is player rankings, where myself and George will each do a top 10 list for each category, and the categories being budget defenders, premium defenders, budget mids, premium mids, budget forwards, premium forwards. So yeah, let's get into it.
Hi guys, and welcome to the final episode of FPL player rankings for this season. So, I mean, naturally, because it's the final episode and there is only one fixture left, main theme of pretty much all of this is just going to be fixtures. It's going to be which teams and players have the best fixtures, and yeah, you'll see that just reflected throughout the list. So I guess the obvious place to get started then, in that case, is with Kivior. Now, as we said before, throughout the entire season, that Southampton fixture is the best fixture on every team's calendar. Arsenal have the best defence in the league, statistically, by goals conceded. Just not much place to go wrong with a Kivior pick, really.
Yeah, especially, he seems probably the most nailed in that defence right now. I mean, you'd usually say Saliba, who we'll talk about in a bit, but he seemed to go off in the last game. So Kivior just seems the most nailed guy in there now. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't offer a great deal going forward, but defence, it doesn't get much better than the fixture and the defence he's playing in.
Yeah, exactly. So, he's definitely the safer pick there. If you do prefer your defenders and having a bit of security around, or clean sheet chasing, then he's definitely the way to go. Now, where it does get slightly more interesting is Livramento and Wan-Bissaka. Both have good fixtures. Everton at home for Newcastle, and Newcastle have everything to play for. So we will be throwing the kitchen sink at that. We will be, keeping our best team out there. And then Wan-Bissaka and West Ham have also, again, an incredible fixture, which is Ipswich. So the fixtures are there for both of them. I think the difference is, me at least, that Ipswich fixture is, really, really good. But then Livramento is playing for a slightly better defence than Wan-Bissaka. So it's mainly down to preference, I think, between those two.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, it depends how much you kind of believe in people having something to play for as well. Obviously, Newcastle do have a lot to play for, which is why I've got Livramento higher, just because you can expect potentially more output from Newcastle in general. If they both had something to play for, I think they would be pretty even. But I mean, they are quite even regardless. But yeah, I think for me that splits them. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where I land. Again, it's a situation, if you already have any of them, absolutely not worth moving to another one and using a transfer on that. All three of those guys we just mentioned are fantastic options and the best options going in at this price range into this week. Now, a lot of people also may have been thinking about Huijsen and Konza this week, that sort of category. Now, again, we're speaking about fantastic fixtures. Bournemouth playing Leicester at home doesn't get much better than that. Is Huijsen someone you would consider bringing in if you didn't already own those other three? Yeah, I think so. I do like Huijsen. I mean, I like that fixture quite a lot. If you're going to be bringing in players, it's difficult because defenders, unless you've got like a free hit, you're not really going to want to be using your moves on defenders this week if you can help it. Maybe you're in a situation where you need to, so that's fine. But if you don't need to, you're probably going to want to use your transfers on midfielders and then forwards. But I do like Huijsen quite a lot if you're going for it. If you want like a differential defender, then yeah, I do like him.
Completely agree. And as we said before about sort of Aston Villa and their sort of fixtures, again, they just fallen into a really nice fixture to end the season. Man United away, its attention, is going to be elsewhere today, actually. So, yeah, again, it's really hard to go wrong with the top of this list if you have any of these guys. So it's definitely not worth overthinking if you do have any of them or want to move to another one. Just they're all great options.
Yeah, for sure.
Now,
I mean, Konza, on Konza, for the last 3 weeks, I've played the double up of Konza and Martinez. They've kept 3 clean sheets. Konza's obviously scored a goal. Their defence is looking solid right now. So, and obviously that Man United fixture is ideal. So if you have Konza and you're worried about playing him, then don't be.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be playing Man United, even though Man United won't have any fixtures beyond this. They'll be playing a lot of Man United players on a short week. So, again, I've absolutely no reason that can't be another clean sheet for Villa, and there's absolutely no reason that there can even be more attacking returns for defenders as well. Moving on to the premiums now, and there's pretty much one name that just screams out, who is both an excellent attacking outlet and has a fantastic fixture, and that is Kirkez. I think it's hard to look beyond Kirkez for this fixture week.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that fixture quite a lot, given that there's a forward, there's cheap mids. We're going to be talking about this fixture. If you are buying a defender and you have the budget, Kirkez is 100% the one to go for. He's not even close to the others.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen what Bournemouth can do. It's Leicester. They've been sort of pretty leaky all season. But also, more importantly, Leicester have also really been struggling to score. So not only is there big potential for a lot of goals, there's also a really good chance of Bournemouth keeping a clean sheet. So that potential double up there for Kirkez just makes him by far the best option. So if you do have one sort of defensive transfer and Kirkez is within your budget, then don't overthink it and go for him. Now, given the fixtures are quite good, there is a bit of concern about Saliba or potentially Ben White. So would you ever consider moving to Saliba or Ben White? Given it's slightly more money.
I don't think I'd be buying either of them right now. I mean, they're both. Firstly, if Saliba's fine and fit, he's obviously a very good option. The fixture Southampton away is just very good. But at this point in time, if you're buying and you want to buy an Arsenal defender, then Kivior is probably the safest out of all of them in a weird way. So, I'm not sure there's a situation where you'd buy Saliba or White, but that doesn't make them bad options this week.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you have, again, it's a situation where if you have them already, then it's certainly not worth moving just because that Southampton fixture is fantastic. I think given the existence of Kivior to Saliba or White or, a Kirkez, if you are going to go, chasing upside, I think anyone below there is probably not worth considering moving for.
Yeah, I would pretty much definitely agree with that, yeah.
So that rounds out the defender segment. Let us know what you think of our list. Let us know if there's anyone we missed, and we will see you again for the midfielders. Right, welcome back to the cheap midfielders segment. Sorry, the midfielders segment. We will get started straight away with the cheap midfielders. Starting straight away, and it should be no surprise given how tasty that Leicester fixture is to see the Bournemouth boys straight back to the top. Now, Kluivert's minutes have been slightly weird recently. I mean, he started to, but he has been hooked at half time. When he is on the pitch, he is on penalties. So it's kind of it's quite an interesting development, and it's making the choice a little tricky.
Yeah, for me, that makes Semenyo a better option, I think. I mean, yes, Semenyo got this rogue bench in the other week, but apart from that, when he plays, he gets like 85 plus every single game. So I'd be surprised if he didn't start. I'd be surprised if he didn't get good minutes. Whereas Kluivert, just not as sure on. So for me, it makes Semenyo a slightly better option.
Yeah. Again, I think it's. I mean, it's. I'd like to say it's tricky to go wrong, but it is quite easy to go wrong, in the sense that if Kluivert starts and say he gets one of his 80-minute games and Bournemouth get a pen, then he's absolutely the right way to go. But if he does end up getting hooked at half time, then there's quite a lot of jeopardy in that decision there. So I guess it just comes down to personal preference. But we will be forgiven for picking the wrong player, given how many variables are at play there. Now another team with an excellent fixture and a player who's actually got a surprisingly good amount of minutes recently is Martinelli. Now Martinelli, someone you would consider bringing in, especially for the Southampton game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we can't be sure that he does start, for starters. I mean, we can't be sure he does. Also, we can't be that sure on his minutes if he does start, but the last two have been promising. He's got 90 minutes in both of them. That may, in the last game, have been due to wanting to rest other players, because Trossard came off with a knock, it looked like. I mean, Saka came off a little bit earlier to potentially rest him, so Martinelli kind of by default stayed on, but I still think he's a very, very good option. You should get good minutes out of him, and the fixture's unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the best way of summing it up. Even though there are some pretty good premium options, Martinelli's price means that if you are working within a certain budget, or if you are trying to make a free hit work, then he is a very nice option against what's an abysmal Southampton team, really. And then another great pair of options, Asensio and Rodgers. Again, we've mentioned before over the past couple of weeks how good Aston Villa's fixtures are, and how well Aston Villa are playing. So again, another situation where pretty hard to go wrong.
Yeah, there's nothing not to like about either of them. I mean, Asensio surprisingly got 90 minutes against Spurs as well. I just thought that Asensio would be kind of a 60-70 minute guy for the rest of the season, but that 90 minutes is pretty promising, given that he's probably, I think we can only say probably on penalties, given how many he's missed now, but there's potential that he's on penalties, so I think he probably is worth the extra 0.3 over Rodgers now that we've seen he can play 90.
Yeah, completely agree. And then another couple of options if you are, going differential hunting, and they do have a couple of good fixtures. I do want to probably talk about them in the same bracket, and that's Kudus and Murphy. Now, Newcastle and Murphy's fixture against Everton at home is, that's a very good fixture. But I think more importantly is Newcastle have so much to play for, and he is pretty much our only right winger at the club that you can feel very, very safe about his minutes against a bad opposition. And he's shown all season that he has a very strong capacity to return. So I know a lot of people are thinking about moving off of Murphy. I think he is, definitely a start this week. And
yeah, I agree. I firstly definitely wouldn't sell him. I don't think that's that's a thing to be doing. Secondly, if you don't have him and you are working on a real budget and you can't get to someone like Semenyo at 5.7, then I do think that Murphy probably is the best cheaper option out of the lot. Albeit I do kind of like the likes of Sharda, the likes of Damsgaard.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want someone safe, then Murphy's your guy. But if you're in a position where you kind of need to take a bit of a risk, then there's other guys. But yeah, Murphy's for sure the safer option at that price.
Yeah, and it's Kudus someone you would ever consider moving for. I mean, granted the fixture is great. It's just for me, I don't have as much faith in Kudus' production as I do with some of the others in this list.
Yeah, he hasn't been great recently, to be fair. He is a little bit expensive for what he is really as well. When you look at the likes of Semenyo, you look at Rodgers, you look at Sharda, Murphy, 6.2 for Kudus just does seem a bit expensive. But again, when we're working with a one-game sample and it's Ipswich, if you need someone really differential, then I like the punt. But that is all it is, a punt.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I would probably, if you are going to go there, just understand that you are only doing it for differential reasons because there just are better options. Now, moving on to the premium mids, this is probably where
I imagine most people's teams have the most topic of conversation and debate around at the moment. And I think a good place to start will be that top three. So we have the same top three, just slightly different order. I think, mine are pretty much ordered in terms of fixtures. Now, given that Arsenal have, they're not playing for anything else right now, I think there's no reason we don't see Saka get a full 90 at Southampton. And for me, that is, well, maybe not a full 90 per se, sure. But yeah, fair. But at least the lion's share of the minutes.
Yeah, I'm less sure on that. I think it does help that there seems to be just a few injuries dotted around at Arsenal at the moment, so maybe Saka's minutes are just good, but I'm not so convinced that he gets really good minutes. If it was one of them situations where we've seen with Saka before, where you just know he is going to get 90, then for me he'd be top. But I'm just not sure it is that situation at the moment.
Yeah, but then I think similar concerns trickle down into Bowen and Salah, whose teams also have nothing to play for really, and they're also the stars of their teams. So they may even be subject to rotation as well, given the lack of jeopardy. So I think given that all three of those have not really much to play for, I'm kind of just going off of the off of those fixtures. But
yeah, I mean, for me, I think if we were going to see rotation from Salah and Bowen, we'd have seen it already. Salah's played 90 minutes the last 3 games at least. He's played 90 minutes since they won the league, so can't see him not playing 90. Bowen played 90 minutes at the weekend as well. Again, I think we'd just see this rotation. I think we'd have seen it already if it was the case.
Yeah.
So I think they are more safe minutes-wise, but again, I wouldn't be particularly surprised to see Saka get 90.
Yeah, it's very fair. And I think, we even though we say Liverpool haven't got much to play for, I think Salah is records a bit here and, trying to remain in the Ballon d'Or hunt. So I think there is definitely, on a personal level, I think there's definitely something for Salah to still be playing for. And as you say, that's probably why it's been reflected within those 90 minutes.
Yeah. And not only that, but also they're playing against Palace, who just come off the back of winning the FA Cup, also have nothing to play for. So Liverpool and Salah haven't been great since they won the league, but there is quite possibly a situation where Crystal Palace will be really, really bad. So yeah, Salah could be the captain option.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And I think the Southampton fixture and why we have Saka so high is also why you see Odegaard coming out of his little cave down at 8 and 9 where he's been all season. I think fundamentally just throughout the year, Odegaard just hasn't been anywhere near what we expected, especially considering how high his production was last season. As we've said before, that one game sample against Southampton, there's absolutely no reason that Odegaard can't perform.
Yeah, he's been poor this season. He really has. For his, like you say, considering how well he performed last season, but this season he's really not been great. But yeah, his minutes will be good. There was a time earlier in the season where his minutes were a little bit shaky, but he's played 90 for the last 5 games now, so he will get the minutes, and the fixture is a joke. So yeah, I mean, there's other players to buy, but you can't really go wrong with him.
Yeah. So just on that subject then, someone who's in a similar sort of area to them, you mentioned a lot of people were thinking about moving on from KDB. Now, I mean, that Fulham fixture, especially considering how poor Fulham have been recently, considering it's KDB's final ever game for City, you've got to expect he gets the lion's share of minutes there and a proper send-off.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if he didn't start. No idea how many minutes he'll actually get. I don't imagine he'll get 90, but he'll get enough minutes for him to be... if I owned him, I wouldn't be selling him this week. I mean, Fulham have been bad. City looked pretty good the other night against Bournemouth, was it? And, I mean, KDB missed from about 3 yards out. It was crazy. But, yeah, if I owned him, I wouldn't be selling him this week.
You've got to think just on a human level as well, Pep is going to give KDB every chance he can to return in his final game. Put him on free kicks, maybe even give him a penalty if they get it.
and then he will definitely get taken off, so he can have a standing ovation. Likely, it's hard to say that standing ovations don't really hit the same when they're done in like the 50th, 60th minutes as they do when they're done closer towards the end of the game. But we're getting quite meta in terms of analysis. But I don't see the reason to move on from KDB, really.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, there was a point in the game the other day against Bournemouth where Haaland was like kind of almost through on goal and he tried to play it to KDB rather than shoot himself. There could be an element of that. I mean, they do still have a little bit to play for, so potentially not. But yeah, like I say, if I owned him, I wouldn't be selling him.
Yeah, completely agree. Now, someone who I am just absolutely sick of, and I thought I'd punish him by throwing him even further down the list, is Palmer. Now, fixture against Forest isn't that bad. I think as far as fixtures where both teams have something to play for, this is pretty much the only one in the league. And as a result, it's going to be of both teams going full hilt. The loser of this game doesn't get Champions League football. It's pretty much that simple. I
mean, yeah, that is true, but at the same time, Forest have been in this situation for the last 4 weeks and they've just been useless. I don't quite know. Like all season they've been brilliant. Now when it's really come to it and they need results, they've been useless. I mean, they drew against Leicester, they drew against Palace, they lost against Brentford. Admittedly, they beat West Ham, but that's not particularly difficult to do right now. But I mean, I'm just not sure that we're seeing. I'm not sure that we're seeing the Forest that they should be putting out. So I don't hate Palmer as an option this week. I mean, the last time that Forest kept a clean sheet, not even a clue when it was. About 8 games ago. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind Palmer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's not like a terrible option in the grand scheme of things, but I also think Palmer's game might suffer a bit from Jackson being out. Just we've seen how well they work together. So yeah, for me personally, I don't think. I mean, especially considering how many other good options there are, I'd consider benching Palmer, to be honest. But then again, there's definitely a lot of emotion behind that one. But then another interesting option. So going into the final game of the season, Newcastle can ill afford to rest any good players. So, I think you'll see us probably wheel out Isak there, even though he's slightly injured. But another man I think you'll definitely see start is Gordon. Now, Gordon in our last game looked way better than Barnes did. So I would be shocked if that isn't an immediate start over the other one. I don't think we'll do our sort of 5 at the back thing. We tend to wheel out the 5 at the back against teams that are, very strong in an attacking sense. Whereas I think for us against Everton, we will be needing to get goals. And on the off chance that Isak doesn't play, I really hope they see the light and play Gordon up top instead of a Callum Wilson. So I think Gordon just has plenty of upside for me. It's a fixture that matters. He looked good last game. I think he could be a great differential.
Yeah, I think if the fixture didn't matter, we'd potentially not see Gordon, just given that his injury struggles have been kind of... Well, he's had injury struggles, which, I mean, previously hasn't really been the case. But yeah, given that this game is pretty important, I think we will see Gordon. And like you say, he just was better than Barnes. I mean, I didn't particularly watch the game, I only saw highlights, but it looked like he was better than Barnes. So you'd expect him to get minutes for sure.
Yeah. So, that rounds out the premium mid section and indeed the midfielders. Let us know what you think of our list. Let us know if there's anyone we missed. And we will see you again for the forwards. Right, welcome back to the forwards segment. We will get started straight away with the cheap forwards. And I think a great place to start will just be who is probably the best asset you can go out and buy right now, not least because of his fixtures, price, and team, and that's Evan Nilsson.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, there's just so many things to like about him. Like, 1, he's pretty cheap. He's 5.8 million. 2, his fixture's unbelievable. I mean, 3, the fact that Kluivert's minutes are dodgy means that Evan Nilsson could be on penalties for half a game, which again is ideal. But also, a lot of people will be in a position where they've got a striker to sell. Anyone that owns Mateta, for example, can sell him and get Evan Nilsson quite easily. So for me, yeah, he is the person to buy this week. And if you're in a situation where you need to try and gain some points and you're a little bit behind in your league, I don't mind Evan Nilsson as a captaincy option either.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I mean, I'll be doing it. Brad will be doing it. I think it's absolutely nothing not to like. It's because it's not even like you're having to part with 8 or 9 million and have to rejig your team. He's so cheap, and to be the best option while being that cheap, it's If you do have one transfer this week and you're moving off like a Mateta or a Marmoush or something like that, then he's absolutely the way to go. Definitely not one to overthink. And then a couple of other, sneaky differential options in and around this area. One of them being Welbeck. Now, we've spoken before about how much we like Brighton's fixtures. Brighton have got Spurs, which, as far as leaky defences go, Spurs pretty much embody that. So definitely the potential for Welbeck to return there.
Yeah, I mean, we've said over the last kind of 3 weeks, target United, target Spurs. It's been working out pretty well, so no reason not to carry that on. And don't quite know what's going on with João Pedro at the moment. He obviously was back available but wasn't in the squad, so it looks like Welbeck will probably start up front. Even if João Pedro does start, they can both start at the same time. So I think Welbeck's a pretty good option if you want to go like ultra differential.
Yeah, completely agree. Now, another option. I mean, you kind of earlier on in the season, I think I gave him a bit of stick for just being a bad footballer. But I mean, he's more than shut me up, and that's Strand Larsen. Now, Strand Larsen, whether Cunha's in the team or whether Cunha's not in the team, seems to have been more than capable of returns recently. And I think for a striker, that Brentford fixture is actually pretty good. If you're a defender and you're playing Brentford, you've got a lot to be worried about. But as we've mentioned before, Brentford score a lot of goals, but they will also concede a lot of goals. So a potential great option for Strand Larsen there if you are operating on a shoestring budget.
Yeah, for sure. I do like that fixture. It's at home. Who knows whether Cunha will be playing or not. That seems to be a roll of the dice. But yeah, playing Brentford is, as an attacker, is always a good fixture. Like you say, not particularly great if you're a defender, but attacker-wise, always a good fixture. And like you say, he's very cheap, so I like him.
Yeah. And then, not much else inspiring beyond that on this list. Although I do want to point out, last week, if you were lucky enough to have gone and got Liam Delap, you're welcome. Those fixtures too good to miss out on. And what a hat-trick for Delap.
Yeah, I mean, you had him high in your list for like 2 weeks, and every week I was kind of like, he's just not getting the minutes. He's not getting the minutes. Why on earth would he be a good option? He then, I say not getting any minutes. He got 20 minutes, so yeah.
But back to I think much better forward prospects than the King Delap himself. And that is the premium. So we will get started straight away with, I think, no reason to look beyond Ollie Watkins, particularly for game window.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people bought him last week. A lot of people bought him the week before. He is just a very, very good option. We've talked about this fixture for a while as well. Fantastic fixture. There's nothing not to like about him. There's potential that he's on penalties as well, given that Asensio's missed his last few. Before that, it was Rashford on penalties. Before that, it was Tielemans on penalties. They're both injured. Like I say, Asensio's missed his last 2. On the most recent Asensio one, I'm pretty sure that Watkins had the ball in his hands and was looking like he wanted to take it, but didn't. Although Watkins being on penalties is not necessarily the best thing for owners. He's probably the worst penalty taker on the planet. But as a striker, you'd think that he'd be fine. Yeah, potentially on penalties, but even if he isn't, the fixture's just great, and Villa are playing so good right now.
Yeah, exactly. So pretty hard to look beyond him there. Now, another sort of, I believe still is a great option,
and that is Isak. I see quite a few people talking about moving off of him. A few people are worried about their injury. If there's any game any player is ever going to play through injury for, it is Newcastle's final game of the season against Everton. Now, that is must win in the truest sense of the word. As in, if we don't win, we don't get Champions League. Isak probably goes. The amount of jeopardy on this one game is incredible. So, we will wheel Isak out there kicking and screaming in order to get a game in. So, if you're worried about his minutes, I don't think, that's the thing to be worried about here. I think it's whether he starts or not at all. If he can play, he will play. But I will say you probably want to have good bench cover just in case he doesn't start, because if he doesn't start, they will be coming on.
Yeah, I mean, there just isn't a situation where he starts on the bench and then gets 20 minutes at the end. It's either zero or a start probably. So, like you say, just make sure you've got good bench cover, because you might potentially need them.
Yeah, exactly. So, especially considering, how many other problem areas and problem players people have. Some people still have Mateta, some people still have Marmouche. There's quite a lot of other areas which, need addressing before I'd ever consider moving off Isak, especially in terms of this final fixture.
Yeah.
One final potentially fun punt, if you are so inclined, is we did see Havertz make his return to Arsenal, which, quite unexpected, quite ahead of schedule. I mean, it's fair to say that it's, pretty unknown whether he'll get the start in the next game or not. But it certainly has thrown some doubt over, people who own Merino, people who own Trossard. And I think it's probably best not to hang on to those two, given that Havertz could, eat into their time or get a little bit of a run out to end the season.
I mean, he got 15 minutes in the last game, so there is potential that he starts. I mean, we've seen before this season that there have been leaks of the Arsenal lineup, so maybe we get that on Sunday. Maybe we don't, who knows? But I think this is less about Havertz and more that, if you've got the likes of Trossard or Merino, then it could be an issue, given that Havertz may just start and get the minutes up top.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's another situation where if you are feeling spicy and you do want an end of term differential shout, and get Havertz in, slap the captain's armband on him, and just it's a very outside their shout, but against Southampton, anything could happen. So I don't hate it. That's all I'll say.
No, I mean either, and I mean if he does start, he won't get 90 minutes either. But against Southampton, I'm not.
Yeah, you don't need it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's that much of an issue, but yeah.
So that rounds out the premium forward segment, and indeed the forward segment, and indeed the video, and indeed the year. So thank you very much to everyone who watched. Thank you very much to everyone who fed back, and all of the support has not gone unnoticed. And thanks to Brad. So thank you very much again, guys, and we will see you all again next season.
And that is all for this one. If you did like the video, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Thank you for all your support this season on these videos. And if you got any questions on anything we mentioned today or your team, then drop them in the comments. But do check out ingenuityfantasy.com, and we'll see you next season.